Following a fantastic trade deadline as it pertains to Brad Treliving and the Toronto Maple Leafs, the shocking truth has been revealed as he has broken the silence behind the trades for Brandon Carlo and Scott Laughton. But not only that, shocking details have been revealed as it pertains to the Leafs' pursuit and the offer that was given for star Mikko Rantanen. We're going to break all that down in this episode, but before we get into it, folks, quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. If you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. Darius, what an insane day. And since our last video, since the stream, all these different things, we have some comments from Brad Treliving, the truth behind a lot of the trades that they made. But we also had some brutal news come out surrounding Mikko Rantanen. And we're going to start, and you got a little sneak peek there. We're going to start with Mikko Rantanen because this is what a lot of fans are talking about right now. But then we'll dive into some of the comments surrounding, of course, Scott Laughton and Brandon Carlo. I still think they had a A+ trade deadline with all things considered. But Nick Kypreos came out and tweeted that the Maple Leafs had an offer of Minten, Cowan, 2 first-round picks for Mikko Rantanen, and Carolina said no because they thought they could meet him in the playoffs, so he shipped him off to the Western Conference. Darius, before we get into some of the other quotes here, I mean, this is wild. You could argue, Nick Kypreos argued that this would be the best offer on the table for Mikko Rantanen. Ultimately, it's up to you whether you value him or the player they actually got back more, but they were willing to go all in here, and I think I predicted this on one of my previous videos that this was the offer that they had on the table. Minted Cowan and 2 firsts is a hefty price, but I would have absolutely done that 10 times out of 10 if it meant Mikko Rantanen coming to Toronto.
And you did call it in a previous video. You said that was probably what the return was going to be, and that's exactly what they put on the table. Now, the earlier reports were suggesting that the Carolina Hurricanes wanted Matthew Knies and a couple first-round draft picks, and the Leafs were not going to do that. They reframed the trade a little bit. It was Cowan, Minten, and Minten is now gone to the Boston Bruins, but after they pivoted. But that's the reason that the Leafs did not make their trades until today. They were very much in on Mikko Rantanen, and that was the package. 2 first-round picks and Fraser Minten and Easton Cowan. Carolina only said no, and again, I'm going to look into the verbiage a little bit here. They only said no because they might end up seeing the Leafs down the road in the playoffs, so they decided to ship him out west. The other interesting thing that wasn't mentioned in that tweet is that the Leafs were prepared to give Mikko Rantanen an extension worth $110 million. They were going to extend him for 8 years at $110 million. So they were ready to extend him. And that also plays into what they think about what's going to happen with Mitch Marner. I wonder if Brad Treliving kind of knows that he might be walking this offseason. So there is a lot to unpack there. But all of that being said, I am happy with the moves that they ended up making. Would have been happier with Mikko Rantanen, but that's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, we'll have more videos covering that. I think ultimately, for any way for this deal to get done, for this deal to get done, it would have had to include Matthew Knies. I don't think Carolina wanted to go all in on prospects, which is what this package was. 2 young players, and none of which were really going to help them in a cup run this year at all, and then 2 first-round picks. So ultimately, the reason they waited so long was because of that, because they ended up using both of those first-round picks in separate deals for Scott Laughton and, of course, Brandon Carlo. So let us know down below what your thoughts are. Would you have done this deal? Would have made a ton of sense. It would have been an extension on the table, and we assume he would have extended in Toronto. But at the end of the day, he is at least on the other side. He's in the Western Conference now, so the Leafs won't have to deal with him on the Eastern Conference. We'll see if they deal with him in the Cup, which might be an interesting thing, but let's actually win a playoff series first. But regarding Brandon Carlo, Brad Treliving came out and revealed a bunch of different things. So he said he's been on the radar for a long time, but you don't know when players are going to become available. Donnie and I had talked for a while. Donnie made a decision that he was going to go in a certain direction. So the direction being he's going to sell everybody because they traded basically every one of their players. Now, something else from this, 15% is the number. I see you guys in the comment section of our last video letting us know. Thank you guys for that. 15% of the contract was retained for Brandon Carlo. Makes the deal even better. They obviously gave up Minten and the first-round pick, and it seems like Brad Treliving had it planned all along. He was emptying the cupboard in this trade deadline, basically. There's still some things left, of course, Ben Danford, Easton Cowan, but when it comes to 2 first-round picks that were available for trade and Fraser Minten, they were willing to trade them one way or another. They got it done. They got a couple of players. They were on the radar for a long time. And I'm sure some people are going to argue that Mikko Rantanen, you'd rather Scott Laughton plus Carlo as opposed to just Mikko Rantanen. That's up to you guys to decide. Let us know. But it's an interesting trade nonetheless and an absolute haul for the Leafs. And on the radar for a while, but not a player that was rumored in trade talks with anybody, let alone the Leafs.
Not at all. And this was off the radar for me, at least, because we were looking at players that were either RFAs or players that had 1 more year left on their contract, like Scott Laughton, not a guy who has 2 more years left on his contract. This really wasn't on the table, and none of us were really expecting it. But I was even thinking, I remember thinking in last year's playoffs when the Leafs were playing the Bruins, and I know a lot of people are going to say, yeah, hindsight 2020, whatever it is, right? I remember thinking, man, I wish the Leafs had a guy, a right shot defenseman that was big like Brandon Carlo and like the Bruins have. Like a guy that isn't flashy, you don't know too much about, right? He's not a big name or anything like that, but he's going to beat you up and he's going to do the small things right, and he's a good defensive defenseman. Now they literally have Brandon Carlo. I think this is a great move, and the Leafs defense is going to be hard to play against. This is a guy that's not only physical, but he likes to eat pucks just like Chris Tanev. And not only that, now you have Anthony Stolarz in the net, right? Who's going to come up big with some big saves. So this is going to be a tough defense to play against. This almost pushes Benoit out of the lineup completely at this point, which I think is honestly a great thing, because if you're dealing with injuries, then Benoit just goes back into the lineup. You have great depth on the back end there now. So yes, would have been nice to get Mikko Rantanen. Absolutely, right? Absolutely. But I think that the Leafs did need to add one more defenseman. And not only did they do that, they added Scott Laughton as well. And these guys are not rentals. I keep talking about it, right? Like, they're not Ryan O'Reilly, Luke Shen, Nola Charlie. They're not going to leave after this offseason. We have them for at least one more year. And in terms of Brandon Carlo, 2 more years. This is a good trade deadline for the Leafs.
Yeah, very, very good trade deadline. Teams around them got a lot better. The Leafs got significantly better as well. And Scott Laughton, I'm becoming a Leaf because a little bit lost in this. Is the Leafs did acquire Scott Laughton as well for that first. I'm excited for the opportunity and ready to go to be able to come home having been a Leafs fan growing up. It's really special. And of course, he's from Canada and is a Leafs fan growing up. And Derek, you're the one who's been preaching this for months now, even before the trade deadline was even a question. And he's obviously talked to the Leafs at this point, but as of the time of the phone call on TSN on their sports, their trade center, no, I haven't even called my mom yet. So ultimately, it's this is going to be fantastic. And you can see this here, both Brandon, Carlo, and Scott Laughton expected to make their debuts tomorrow. Here's how the lineup could look. So we are going to see their debuts tomorrow, which is a little bit crazy. It's the way with hockey, though. These things get done very quickly. I am excited, and it's against an extremely good and refined Colorado Avalanche team who made a few trades themselves. Now, assuming Pontus Holmberg stays in the second wing, you have Max Domi there on the third. I mean, that's an elite third line now with Max Domi, Scott Laughton, and Bobby McMahon. Obviously, Bobby McMahon manning the scoring. No pun intended. Manning the scoring on that line. Steven Lorentz, David Kampf, Callie Jörnkrook, a very good line as well. And you assume that they're going to pair Morgan Rielly with Brandon Carlo, which will hopefully get Morgan Rielly going. And this is now Rielly's a millionth partner in however many years. So hopefully he finds a partner in Brandon Carlo who he can work well with. But I mean, Morgan Rielly with the puck moving skills, and then Brandon Carlo with not really puck moving skills, but a 6'5" brute who's really responsible defensively, should be a match made in heaven here, especially on the right side. And you mentioned it, Benoit's probably going to be factoring out simply because the fact that Brandon Carlo is a right-handed shot defenseman.
Well, they've tried a different defense pairings throughout the year. He started Morgan Rielly, this is, with Chris Tanev. They kind of figured that isn't really working. I like Chris Tanev with McCabe anyway. It's a good shutdown pair. I think that they should keep those two together. And then they were experimenting with Hakanpää. He's played some time with OEL. He's never really had a defense partner, honestly, ever with the Leafs that kind of, suits his play style. Now with Brandon Carlo, I feel like he can kind of go out and do things like similar to Adam Fox with the New York Rangers, some other offensive defenseman. I'm not saying that Morgan Rielly's an elite offensive defenseman or anything like that, but he has more reign to kind of go out and do his thing now because he knows Brandon Carlo is going to be back there, and he's a serviceable defenseman. Hakanpää earlier this year, we saw for a small sample size, 2 games, okay, this might work. Hakanpää's knee wasn't really, there. So he can't really skate, and he's not a good defense partner for Morgan Rielly. Now Rielly actually has a good defense partner with him. I think this is really exciting for the Leafs. And not only that, it's super exciting that we get to watch this tomorrow already. Like, I love games after trades because there's just, it's not boring. Everyone's like, oh, I can't wait to see how these guys kind of fit into the lineup. And same with Laughton. We kind of knew they were going to acquire him to play third line center. He's been playing the wing with the Flyers a little bit. Berube spoke out and said that he likes him better at center. So he's going to play center. It lengthens the lineup. Domi gets to go back definitively to the wing, which I think is a good thing. And again, it lengthens the lineup. Robertson's been playing well. I want to see that dynamic with Laughton in there. I wonder what he adds to the team. And not only the team, but what he does for that line as well, what the other guys on that line can do. So it's going to be interesting. I would assume Holmberg kind of gets pushed out once Lorentz is back in full time. Pacioretty, we don't know what's going on with that. But for tomorrow night, it's just going to be exciting to see what they can do for the lineup. But I think Carlo is going to be a big X factor for this team.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. Craig Berube, I'm still thinking about it, but I've always liked him down the middle of the ice. He's obviously going to be a center, even though he hasn't been great at center for the Flyers this year. He's John Tortorella preferred him on the wings. Now he's going to be on this in the center spot, and it's going to be interesting to see how Torts kind of handles Nikita Gurbankin. Hopefully they treat him well over there in Philadelphia. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know down below what your thoughts are. Crazy, crazy day. So we're going to keep you up to date with all the latest news going forward, and we get to watch all these guys play tomorrow. Cheers.